Jai Sri Sri Guru Guranga Radha Shantam Giri Hari Ju Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Bhakti Nirmala Charja Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Gurudev Srila Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Srila Guru Maharaj Om Vishnupad Srila Bhakti Rakak Sri Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Prabhupada Bhagavan Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Rupanu Guru Bhagya Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Sri Chaitanya Saraswata Acharya Brinda Ki Jai. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Ki Jai. Sri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. Nitai Gaura Premanandi Hari Hari Bo. So today is Sunday 31st of January, the last day of January in the new year 2021, and currently in London we're still under lockdown conditions, as our temple in Green Street is very small at the moment. We are closed to the public, and only the residents and servitors are coming to the temple, and we ask everybody to please excuse us if this causes any difficulty. But still, we are trying to broadcast some Harikatha every week from here, and this we're doing on our East London Facebook page. So we're discussing Upadeshamrita at the moment. The additional part of the book, which is called Bhakti Alok by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, which discusses the 6 faults that destroy bhakti. So last week we spoke about atyahara and prayasa, so which means like overeating or over accumulation of things, and prayasa, which means endeavoring for over endeavoring for things which are very difficult to attain, as both faults which can hamper, and if not just hamper but destroy our bhakti lata when we're in a very vulnerable stage, as we are being Baddha Jivas and Sadhakas. So today we're going to talk about Prajalpa. Prajalpa is a very difficult thing. In the beginning of Upadeshamrita, first of all, in the first verse, Vacho Vegam, Manasakroda Vegam, the different Vegams or impulses that we need to control, and the first and foremost amongst them is the control of the tongue. And the tongue is always wants to speak, wants to make noise, and also wants to taste things, nice food and so on. So the tongue is the most difficult of all of the senses for us to control. But we can control that by using our tongue to speak Harikatha, and using our tongue to take and taste Krishna Prasadam. But so the third in that verse, which is the second verse, Atyahara Prayasas Cha Prajalpa Niyamagraha. Prajalpa is the third fault of the 6 faults which destroy bhakti, and Bhaktivinoda Thakur has spoken about this in this book, Bhakti Alok, and this is the short chapter regarding Prajalpa. So we'll read that, and anything that comes to mind we can speak. So Prajalpa, conversing with others is called Jalpana or Prajalpa. Aversion to Bhagavan is so strong in the world nowadays that whenever we converse with others, conversation based on such aversion almost always occurs. For bhakti sadhakas, therefore, conversation is generally not beneficial. While the cultivation of bhakti, within the cultivation of bhakti, however, there are many types of conversation, and all of these are beneficial for devotees. Srila Rupa Prabhu himself has written in his Karpanya Panjika Stotra, Tatapyasmin kadachidvam hadisho nama jalpini, abadya brinda nistori nama baso prasiddhatam. Still, O my Lord and Lady, the semblance of whose names delivers one from all sins, be pleased with this occasional chanter of your names. What a nice prayer. The Vaishnavas recite this verse in this sense. Tatapi e dina jane jadi nama ucharane nama basa korila jivane sarva dosha nivarana duhu nama sanjalpana prasade prasiddha dui jane. Still, while uttering your names, if this poor soul has ever in life chanted a semblance, a bas of your names, the chanting of which removes all vice, then may the two of you mercifully be pleased with me. Excuse me. Chanting, hymns, and recitation of scripture, these are all forms of conversation. When they are done with a favorable mood, free from any anya bilasa, then they all become cultivation of Krishna. Anya bilasa means like uncontrolled impulse, just to do anything or anything for one's own pleasure. It's called anya bilas.
As it comes to your mind.
Therefore, the conclusion is that of all prajalpa, conversation, that is unfavorable to Krishna bhakti, is antithetical to bhakti. Sadhakas should very cautiously avoid prajalpa. There is no fault in the activities of the Mahajans or the great souls. Only all the prajalpa favorable to bhakti that the Mahajans have respectfully engaged in is our duty. Some so-called devotees instruct us to give up all forms of prajalpa. Jai. We, however, are Sri Rupanugas, the followers of Sri Rupa, and being followers of Sri Rupa, we will always follow the path of the sadhus, as he has instructed. Samrigya Shreyasam Hedhu Pantash Santapa Varjita Anavapta Shraman Purve Jaina Shanta Pratishtire. This is from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. We should always follow the path free from hardship and leading to all good fortune, which the sadhus of the past followed without difficulty. The path which Sri Vyas, Sri Shuka, Sri Prahlad, Sriman Mahaprabhu and his associates have shown is our path of the Mahajans. We are not obliged to listen to the instructions of new so-called devotees and give up this path. The prajalpa, which all the Mahajans have honoured as conducive to Hari Bhakti, we will discuss elsewhere. Prajalpa based on aversion to Bhagavan is obstructive to Bhakti. There are many types of it: useless chat, conjecture, discussion of others, debate, finding faults in others, speaking falsehoods, criticizing sadhus, village talk, and so on are all prajalpa. Each of these categories of prajalpa will now be explained. Useless chat is extremely detrimental. Not uselessly wasting their time, bhakti sadhakas in the association of devotees should always engage Useless chat is extremely detrimental. Not uselessly wasting their time, bhakti sadhakas in the association of devotees should always engage in discussion of topics related to Hari. And in solitude remember Hari's name and so forth. Sri Gita has said, Aham sarvasya prabhavo mata sarvam pravartate. Iti matva bhajante mam buddha bhava samanvita. Matchita matgata prana bodhayanta parasparam. Kanta katayantas chamam nityam tushanticha ramanticha. I am the origin of everything, and everything emanates from me. Understanding this, the wise serve me, filled with love. Their minds absorbed in me, their lives dedicated to me. Enlightening one another and speaking about me, they constantly feel satisfaction and bliss. This is from the 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, very famous verses. Elsewhere in Sri Gita, Satatam kirtayantomam dyatantascha dridabritai namasyantascha mam bhaktya nitya yukta upashyate. Always glorifying me, striving for me, and bowing to me, firm in their vows and ever aspiring for me, they worship me with bhakti. In this way, bhakti sadhakas should cultivate unalloyed bhakti. If they spend their days or nights engaged in useless chat with worldly people, then they do not follow the instructions to always chant my name. In the newspaper, there is so much useless chat. For bhakti sadhakas, reading the newspaper is a very harmful activity. But if any discussion of pure devotees is found there, then the newspaper may be read. We're reminded that in one of Guru Maharaj's godbrother's temple, and also in Guru Maharaj's temple, it was forbidden for the brahmacharis to read the newspapers. And one of the disciples of that mott, maybe Madhusudan Maharaj's, Bhakti Kamal Madhusudan Maharaj, Guru Maharaj's godbrother, I think, his disciple was reading the newspaper, and Madhusudan Maharaj told him, no, you must not read the newspaper, it is not allowed. And he said, but Sridhar Maharaj reads the newspaper. When I was at his mott, I saw him reading the newspaper. Yeah. And Madhusudan Maharaj's response was, Sridhar Maharaj's reading the newspaper is the same as you or I reading the Srimad Bhagavatam. So obviously, that rule is, you can say, dependent on the person. The general rule may be that for bhakti sadhakas, reading the newspaper is a type of prajalpa. But somebody like Srila Guru Maharaj, and when I say somebody like Srila Guru Maharaj, there is nobody like Srila Guru Maharaj, but that a bhakta of such a high caliber, whatever they read, they are able to connect that with Krishna and see that which is useful for Krishna bhakti, even within the pages of the newspaper.
That's what they say to me, Guru, they like cricket. They said, we are supposed to score. I said, Maharaj, India lost against Australia. It's a good entertaining value. The way Guru there looks is a different style. No?
Yeah,
Guru Maharaj and Guru there.
After eating and other activities, common people regularly smoke and engage in useless chat with other worldly people. It is extremely difficult for them to become followers of Sri Rupa. They similarly also read novels, but if any novel like the story of Paranjan in Srimad Bhagavatam can be found, then reading that is not an impediment to bhakti. Rather, there is benefit in it. Conjecture is a form of prajalpa that is obstructive to bhakti. All the arguments the followers of logic, Nyaya, and atomic theory, Vaisheshika, make are simply worldly quarrels. Apart from a loss of mental strength and an increase in fickle-mindedness, no other results come from them. The Vedas, Katha Upanishad, has said, Naisha Tarkena Matir Apaneya. This conception should not be sought or rebutted with argument. The proper conception for the jiva is eternally present in their innate intelligence. This conception naturally flows towards the lotus feet of Bhagavan. But by arguing about directions, places, mistakes, and illusions, the heart becomes rough. Then that natural, pure conception remains no longer. So, yeah, actually, it's told that you cannot, the absolute truth cannot be established by argument. So the argument, whatever, even if you're a preacher of Krishna consciousness, you may be able to argue very well your position, but you'll always come across somebody who's better at arguing than you are. Then what will you do? If you are defeated by them, then your faith will be damaged. So we're not interested in engaging in argument, even about Krishna consciousness with others. That is not our purpose.
We have to harmonize internally.
Yeah. If we accept the 10 principles or the Dasamula taught in the Vedas and argue according to them, our conception does not become polluted. If what is good and what is bad is argued according to the Vedas, then that is no longer Prajalpa. This is why Sriman Mahaprabhu has instructed, Ata eva Bhagavata Karaha Bichara. Therefore study Sriman Bhagavatam. This is from Madhya Leela of Chaitanya Charitamrita. Discussion that is conducted to establish Sambandha Gyan is not Prajalpa. The followers of those who conquer assemblies by making useless arguments do not reach any conclusions or siddhanta, and therefore giving up the association of those fond of argument is necessary. Sri Vasudev Sarvabhauma himself has accepted this point, from Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Leela. Tarkika Shrigala Sange Behu Behu Kari Se Muke Eba Sada Kahi Krishna Hari. In the association of jackals fond of argument, I barked, Bahu, Bahu. But now with this mouth I constantly chant, Krishna Hari. May those who are regularly engaged in spiritual discussion remember these words of the sannyasis of Varanasi. Paramata bichara gela karimatravad katta mukti pabakaha krishnara prasad. Discussion of the highest attainment is gone. Shankaracharya simply promotes a theory. So where will we attain liberation? Where will we receive Krishna's mercy? Useless arguments may arise from envy or pride, aversion or attachment to material things, foolishness or self-establishment. Quarrelsome people also become maddened by useless argument. When bhakti sadhakas discuss the nature of Bhagavan and the lives of the devotees, then they should always be careful that useless arguments do not occur over these subjects. Unnecessary discussion of others is extremely antithetical to bhakti. Many people talk about others to establish their own position. Some people envy others and naturally discuss their behavior. The minds of those who are preoccupied with such subjects can never become fixed on the lotus feet of Krishna. Giving up talking about others in all respects is necessary for bhakti sadhakas. In fact, Guru Maharaj would speak about that a lot, that we should not look at to the faults of others. And he said very simply and expressly that if you look at the faults of others, then definitely those faults will come on you. Because what we see in the faults we see in others are actually faults within ourselves.
Gurudev used to say, analyze yourself.
Sometimes it's necessary in the service of the Lord to look to the faults of others. But that is, for example, in the case of the guru or the preceptor, they will see what is the fault within their disciple or within another Vaishnava, with the aim of helping them to overcome that fault. Sometimes it's necessary for others to point that out to us, but that is a particular, it's what's called Guru Abhiman. Guru Abhiman means the Vaishnava who has accepted the disciple as their student. In their Guru Abhiman, or in the mood of the teacher, they may see the faults of their disciples in order to correct those faults. But for the rest of us, it is not necessary to concentrate on the faults of others. And rather, it is better for us to see the good qualities in others. Try to see where bhakti is, where we find devotion in others.
No one is perfect. They have little some fault.
Of course.
We have to. No one is 100%.
When I give you an example, when a friend of mine, he came here one time to visit one of the devotees who is his family member that was here at that time, and came here, and I was feeling some bad feeling within myself towards that person. Oh, they never come here, and now they're coming just for socializing with their family. And this person is a devotee, but not practicing devotee. But when he came, he came into the temple room and bowed down before the deities, and immediately my mind changed. And I thought, oh, I'm thinking so badly about this person that they're coming here with the wrong motive and so many things, but how many people in the world come and bow down before Lord Krishna? Then just to see that somebody does that, that is a wonderful thing, a praiseworthy thing, a worshipable thing. So then I try to modify my thinking about that particular person and try to be a little bit more generous in my outlook. Because actually, Krishna himself says in the Gita that to find a devotee is a very rare thing. So, however, as Prabhu was saying, sometimes Gurudev would say, devotee, devotee, devotee. We're always saying devotee, but who is really a devotee? Who is 100% devoted? Or who is 5% devoted? Or who is 20% devoted? We don't know. We can't see that. So therefore we are advised to give honor to all of the devotees and to look to their devotional aspect and overlook the faults. So we should be very, you can say, we should be very forgiving of others and also lenient towards the faults of others, but more strict with our own faults. Look to our own faults.
Means lenient to all.
Yes, lenient to all.
Sometimes people think, oh, only my friend or my relative.
Yes.
It's supposed to be for everyone, isn't it?
Yes, that's because that's provincial interest. Everyone is thinking only about their own self. That's a form of extended selfishness, actually. Thinking only about my friend or my family or my community or whatever it may be. But we are advised to try to see everybody with an equal eye. But especially we should be we should be tolerant and forgiving towards the devotees.
There is nobody's side.
Yeah, someone
Sometimes
I saw once in a movie. Then the like leader of the army, he's saying, "Oh, everyone is praying that God will be on their side. We are praying to God will be on our side. On the opposite army, they're praying that God will be on their side." But he said, "But I'm thinking, but who is on God's side? Everyone wants God to be on their side, but who is on God's side?" This should be our criteria. There are, however, many favorable subjects for bhakti sadhana, and although these are also forms of discussion about others, there is no fault in them. If we are to completely give up talking about others, then living in the forest is necessary. There are two types of bhakti sadhakas, householders and renunciants. Because renunciants engage in no worldly enterprises whatsoever, they can give up talking about others in all respects. Householders, however, with regard to earning, saving, protection, and the maintenance of their family, cannot completely give up talking about others. For them, living in a Krishna-centered family is the only proper approach. If all their worldly activities are related to Krishna, then their unavoidable discussion of others will be sinless and conducive to Krishna bhakti. They should not engage in discussion of others whereby others are hurt. They should engage in what little discussion of others is necessary for their Krishna-centered life and Krishna-centered family. They should not engage in unnecessary discussion of others. Here, I already mentioned this, but Bhaktivinoda Thakur also mentioning here. When a guru instructs a disciple to enlighten them about a subject, then if he does not, out of necessity, discuss others to a small extent, the instructions may not be clear. When previous Mahajans discussed others in that way, there was value and not fault in it, as in the statement of Sri Shukadev from Srimad Bhagavatam, Nidraya Riyate Naktam Vyavayena Chavavayaha Dva Charte Haya Rajan Kutuba Baranena Va Dehapti Kalatradishvatma Sainjesh Asatva Api Tesham Pramato Nidanam Pasyan Api Napasyati. O king, worldly persons either pass their nights absorbed in sleep or spend them in the company of their wives. During the day, they waste their time in the pursuit of wealth or in maintaining their family. They consider their body, children, and wife as their own, and even though they see their destruction, they madly do not recognize them to be temporary. Although Sri Shukadev discusses worldly persons in this way to instruct his disciple, he is not a Prajalpi, one who engages in Prajalpa. Such behavior should thus be accepted as beneficial. Moreover, for the sake of instruction, Sriman Mahaprabhu has spoken about the subject of false renunciates to his own disciples as follows. From the Antilila of Chaitanya Charitamrita. Prabhu kahe vairagi kare prakriti sambhashana. Dekite na paro ami tahara badana. Kudra jiva shabbam markata vairagya korea. Indriya charana bule prakriti sambhasya. Prabhu kahe more of us, nahe more mana. Prakriti sambhasi vairagi Nakare Darshana. Mahaprabhu said, I cannot look at the face of a renunciate who converses with women. Vile jivas engage in monkey renunciation and driven by the senses roam about conversing with women. Mahaprabhu continued, my mind is not under my control. It will not look at a renunciate who converses with women. If one does not make statements such as this for the purpose of instruction, or when establishing the proper conclusion on a particular subject, then there is no benefit for the world or oneself. Therefore, when the Mahatmas and our Gurus have instructed the world by behaving in this way, then how will there be any benefit for us in acting contrary to these instructions? In such context, discussing some improper behavior present within a particular tradition or sampradaya, or in the general public, cannot be said to be prajalpa contrary to bhakti. Even if discussion of a particular person sometimes occurs, there is no fault. The great devotee Maitreya spoke about Vainaraj as follows, from the Bhagavatam, 4th canto. Itam viparjaya mati papiyan utpatam gataha anuni yamanashtad yachanam na chakre brashta mangalaha. The crazed, misdirected and greatly sinful Vainaraj, even after many supplications, did not fulfill the great sage's request, because he had lost all his good fortune. This sort of discussion of others was necessary for Sri Maitreya Rishi, and therefore he spoke in this way to his audience, along with statements of instruction. This is not prajalpa. In the association of devotees, the ancient histories of bhakti sadhakas are naturally discussed. Therein, discussion of the behavior of non-sadhus can also be seen. This is always beneficial and favorable to bhakti, but people who discuss others motivated by tendencies obstructive to bhakti, such as envy, enmity, pride, or desire for pratishtha, are offenders of Bhakti Devi, the goddess of devotion. Debate arises only from a desire for victory. It is extremely necessary to abandon. Finding fault in others occurs only by the direction of our own wicked propensities. This must be given up in all respects. Speaking falsehoods is only another form of useless chat. For renunciate Vaishnavas, village talk should be avoided in all respects. And for householder Vaishnavas, it should be accepted to a certain extent in a manner favorable to bhakti. Archaeology, zoology, astrology, geography, and so on, when discussed in a worldly-minded way, should be avoided from afar. Sri Shukadev has said, Mrishya giris tahi asatir asat kata, nakatyate yad bhagavan adhuksa jaha. Tad eva satyam tad uhaiva mangalam, tad eva punyam bhagavad gunodayam, tad eva ramyam ruchiram navam navam, tad eva shashvam manaso mahotsavam, tad eva shokara nava shoshanamrinam, yad uttama shloka jasho nugiyate. O King, all statements in which discussion of Bhagavan, the transcendent, does not arise are false and unreal. Statements in which the glories of Bhagavan arise are true. They alone are auspicious, and they alone are pure. Statements in which the glories of Bhagavan, he of the highest praise, are sung, are delightful, beautiful, and a grand festival for the heart. They are the evaporation of the ocean of humanity's lamentation. Speech in the form of criticism of sadhus is extremely inauspicious. If anyone aspires to attain Hari Bhakti, then let them make this vow: never in this life will I criticize sadhus. The devotees of Bhagavan are sadhus. By criticizing them, all good fortune is destroyed. By criticizing the great purifier, Sri Mahadev, the topmost ascetic, Daksha Prajapati underwent severe adversity. Jai. Ayushriyam jasho dharmam lokam ashisha evacha. Hanti shreyamsi sarvani punksho mahad atikramaha. When mahad atikrama, an offense against a great soul, occurs, that is, when a human being speaks disrespectful words to the sadhus, then their life, beauty, fame, virtue, destination in the afterlife, and goodness, all their good fortune are destroyed. The essence of this article is that Vaishnava Bhakti sadhakas should, with great care, give up all prajalpa that is not favorable to bhakti. Amidst all these instructions, vacho vegam in the first verse, that is, the instruction to tolerate the urge to speak, is only conditional. By giving up prajalpa, one's speech becomes permanently regulated. Speaking in any way beyond what little is necessary for the continuation of a sinless life is not good. Discussing subjects wherein there is good fortune for ourselves and other jivas is necessary. If we go to discuss the affairs of others, our speech will become worthless. Sri Bhagavan has thus instructed Sri Uddhav as follows: Para sabhava karmani jaha prasasmashati nindati sa ashu brashyate svartad asat abhi niveshitaha. One who praises or criticizes the nature and actions of others becomes immersed in worldly matters and soon falls away from one's best interest. So, in the control of the tongue, to think before we speak is always very necessary. And there's a saying, possibly in the Zen tradition, maybe, I read it somewhere, but I liked it very much, that if what you are about to say is not more beautiful than silence, better not to speak. So we should be careful. Srila Prabhupada says, you know, in one of his purports of Srimad Bhagavatam, I believe, that just idle talk, just speaking, is like the frog croaking, inviting the python to come and eat him. He's basically saying, "Here I am, come and eat me," by his loud croaking. But so in the similar way, just unnecessarily speaking about anything and everything, that is just inviting our misfortune to come to us.
Jain people wear a clothes like this, not to kill insects even.
But we are to not to be manobrata or anything like that, to take a vow of silence, but rather we should take a vow not to speak unnecessarily about anything which is not related to Hari Bhakti and to Krishna consciousness. Now this is Prajalpa. And the next one, we can also read this one, I think, is Niyamagraha. Niyamagraha means the rules and regulations of Bhakti. So Rupa Goswami says, not to fanatically follow rules and regulations just for the sake of the rules and regulations, and also not to disregard the rules and regulations, of Bhakti. Both will be injurious to our Bhakti sadhana. To follow rules just for their own sake, and to neglect the rules just out of a whim. So this is called Niyamagraha. Niyamas, rules, are of two types: prescriptions and prohibitions. Actions which are prescribed to be done are prescriptive niyamas. Actions which are prohibited from being done are prohibitive niyamas. Both types of niyamas are beneficial for the jiva. Conditioned jivas are eligible even for from a very deplorable position to attain a very desirable position. There are many levels between these two positions. Each level is a gradual step. Each step is a resting place. And for each step, various niyamas in the form of specific prescriptions and prohibitions are defined. When a jiva places their feet and rests on a particular step, then they are required to follow the designated prescriptions and prohibitions for that step. By following these designated prescriptions and prohibitions, they attain eligibility to reach the next higher step. If they are unable to attain such eligibility, they lose their position and drop down to a lower step. This is called degeneration or durgati. Reaching a higher step is called advancement or sadgati. Properly following the niyamas pertaining to the step one has attained is called swadharma, or adherence to one's own eligibility. Swadhikara nishta. Adherence to one's own eligibility is a virtue, or guna, and giving up adherence to one's own eligibility is a vice, or dosha. There is nothing other than such virtue and vice. Sri Bhagavan therefore has given this instruction to Uddhava. Sway sway dikareja nistasa gunaha prakriti viparjaya sudosha shad ubayor esha nishchayaha desha kaladi bhavanam vastunam mama shatatam guna dosho vide jete niyamartam hikarmanam. Adherence to one's own eligibility is a virtue, and its opposite is a vice. This is the proper conclusion. Rules of virtue and vice have been established for jivas regarding the necessary niyamas concerning all places, times, and objects. If we go into further discussion of prescriptive and prohibitive niyamas, then there are two types according to the distinction between those that are fixed, nitya, and conditional, naimitika. The jiva is a pure spiritual entity. The prescriptive and prohibitive niyamas present when the jiva is situated in their eternal nature or svabhava are the fixed niyamas. The state distinct from their own eternal state, that the jiva attains through the conditions imposed by Maya, is conditional upadika. That conditional state may be of many types. The eternal state is one and non-dual. In the eternal state, the prescription for the jiva is prema, and the prohibition is envy. These prescriptive and prohibitive niyamas suit the jiva's eternal nature. The jiva free from envy and filled with prema is a vessel, ashraya, of eternal rasa. Although rasa is of 5 types, it is one undivided spiritual substance, or tattva. The niyamas for that eternal state are not for us to discuss in detail here. It is necessary to know simply and only that the jiva's natural eternal existence is in that state. Although in the conditional state niyamas are of many types, according to the analysis of their general characteristics, all the steps therein can be divided into 3 categories. According to the view of the Vedas, Gita and all the Smritis, 3 general categories can be seen: karma, jnana, and bhakti. In each division, certain prescriptions and prohibitions are designated. In the karma division, the rules of varna and ashram, the 10 sanskars therein, and daily duties are the prescriptions. Sin, pataka, literally that which causes one to fall, and minor sin, upapataka, are the prohibitions. In the second division, that is the Gyan division, sannyas, renunciation of fruitive action, tyag, renunciation of the fruits of action, vairagya, detachment, and analysis of matter and spirit are the prescriptions. Desirous action, kamya, karma, forbidden action, nisiddha karma, and attachment to material objects are the prohibitions. In the bhakti division, indifference to the mundane, action favorable to bhakti, following the prescriptions and prohibitions of the Gyan division, thereby maintaining one's life and engaging in service to Bhagavan are the prescriptions. Giving up all karma, Gyan and renunciation, tyag, that are averse to Bhagavan, attachment to material things, and all other conclusions and activities that are unfavorable to bhakti are the prohibitions. When a conditioned jiva gives up their unlawful life, that is their low-class behavior, and progresses, then they stand first on the step of the karma kanda. Jivas on this step, aspiring for the higher stop of the jnana kanda, should always remain fixed in the duties of their varna and ashram. This is the niyama for them. If they give up their adherence to the duties of their varna and ashram before they develop disinterest in material activity, through analysis of matter and spirit, and discernment of the nature of the false ego, ahankara, then they become a transgressor. But when disinterest does develop, then a higher eligibility, adhikar, comes and does away with their necessity of adherence to their duties. If at that time they are excessively attached to the niyamas of the karma stage, then they do not advance any further. For a person situated on the step of Gyan, adherence to Gyan is the niyama. As long as no taste or ruchi for the step of bhakti arises, then they should remain fixed in the jnana niyamas. Only when the stage of bhakti begins should adherence to Gyan be renounced. Otherwise, spoiled by the fruit of niyamagraha, they will not progress. That's otherwise spoiled by the fault of niyamagraha, they will not progress. Tavat karmani kurvita na nivedyeta jabata. Matkata shravanado va shraddha yavan najayate. From Srimad Bhagavatam. As long as disinterest produced by discernment has not developed, they should perform karma. Such disinterest will remain effective as long as faith in discussion of Krishna has not arisen. Shraddha, faith alone, is the basis of eligibility for bhakti. Tasman mad bhakti juktasya yogina vai mad atmanaha. Na jnananam na cha vairagyam praya shreyo bhaved iha. The yogis with bhakti to me, gyan, knowledge, and vairagya, renunciation, are not beneficial. That is, only when attachment to knowledge and renunciation goes far away from the heart do the practices of bhakti function properly. The temple of prema for Krishna is situated on the highest peak of Sri Goloka Vrindavan. To reach there, we have to go beyond the staircase of the 14-plane material world of the Karma Kanda, cross beyond the Viraja and Brahmalok steps of the Jnana Kanda, and rise up above Vaikuntha. By gradually ceasing to adhere to the steps of karma and jnana, we attain the qualification for bhakti. Then we have to cross the bhakti steps and behold the doorway to the temple of prema. For persons situated on the steps of bhakti, Shraddha, faith is the niyama. When Shraddha, by the power of bhajan service, under the full shelter of sadhu and guru, becomes completely free from anarthas, or vices, then it manifests in the form of nishtha, or constancy in bhakti. The more anarthas fall away, the further one ascends the steps of progress. Nishtha manifests into ruchi, or taste, and ruchi manifests into ashakti, attachment, and then ashakti manifests into bhava, pure bhakti, bhava in the form of rati, a specific type of attachment to Bhagavan, in combination with the all requisite ingredients, then becomes rasa. Jata jatatma parimrijyatesho mat punya gata shravana bide hanihi tata tata pashati vastu shukshmam chakshur jataivanjana samprayuktam. As much as the jiva becomes purified by hearing and chanting about my divine glories, so much so they are subtle truth, so much so they see subtle truth, just as eyes treated with ointment gradually see subtle objects. Srila Rupa Goswami has clearly listed these stages in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Ado Shraddha tata sadhu sangha ta bhajana kriya tato narta nibriti syat tato nishta ruchis tata ata shaktis tato bhavas tata prema bhudanchati sadhakanam ayam premna pradhubhave bhavet kramaha. This is from the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. It's also found in Chaitanya Charitamrita in the Madhya Leela, I believe. We were discussing this verse with Janardhan Maharaj, Srila Janardhan Maharaj, on Wednesday evening. We have a Zoom talk with Janardhan Maharaj every Wednesday evening at 7 o'clock. And this verse, we were discussing this verse, he was discussing this verse with us there. In sadhana bhakti, there are 4 steps: Shraddha, Nishtha, Ruchi, and Ashakti. By ascending these 4 steps, one reaches the step of bhava, the door to prema. At each step, according to the level of Shraddha, there are some particular niyamas. When one leaves behind one particular step and rises up to the next step, then one has to leave behind the niyamas of the previous step and honor the niyamas of the next step. For those who do not do this and do not give up their attachment to the niyamas of the previous step, those niyamas become chains that bind them to the previous step. They do not let them rise to the next step. So it sounds pretty good, doesn't it? That 4 stages: Shraddha, Nishtha, Ruchi, Ashakti. But first is Shraddha. And when one has Shraddha, then comes Sadhu Sangha. And with their Shraddha, in combination with that Sadhu Sangha, that leads to Bhajana Kriya. So that means when one has faith in a particular sadhu, then they serve under that sadhu. That means through initiation. Then that is called Bhajana Kriya. Bhajana Kriya means to serve or to follow or worship under the direction of a superior Vaishnava, generally one's guru. And by that Bhajana Kriya is effected Anartha Nibriti. So before one can reach the stage of Nishtha, one has to be completed the stage of Anartha Nibriti. So according to Srila Guru Maharaj, the stage of Anartha Nibriti is almost eternal. It goes on constantly before one reaches the stage of Nishtha. That the the space between that of Shraddha and Nishta is vast. And it's a continual process. And the example is often given of when you make ghee from butter, you melt the butter and gradually you boil the butter, and the solids, they rise to the top. Then they have to be skimmed off. So similarly, in the stage of anarta nibriti, the impurities or the anartas, the unwanted things, they rise to the surface. Then they have to be skimmed off and left behind. And this is a continual process, and it becomes finer and finer and finer. Just as with making ghee, to begin with, the solids, there are lots of them, and they're very obvious. But as the butter oil becomes purer and purer, then the solids become less noticeable or more subtle, less easy to remove. So similarly, with anarta nibriti, this goes on, and until one reaches the stage of nishta, and nishta means constancy or firm faith. And Srila Sri Maharaj said, nishta nothing. Like nishta is still just a beginner stage. Nishta, he said, nishta nothing. And from nishta comes ruchi. Ruchi means taste. So when real taste for Krishna consciousness, constant taste for Krishna consciousness, only happens after the process of anarta nibriti is complete. And then from ruchi, the taste for Krishna consciousness, comes ashakti. Ashakti means that you cannot leave it for one moment. The state of mind, or the state of consciousness rather, not mind, but the state of consciousness that is absorbed in Krishna bhakti cannot be left for even a moment for any other purpose. So, this is ashakti, is the last stage of sadhana bhakti before one reaches the stage of bhava bhakti, and bhava bhakti is the beginning of the not sadhana bhakti but sadhya bhakti, or bhakti that is automatic. Ragamarga bhakti. It is a very high thing. And Guru Maharaj said this verse delivers the death blow to the sahajyas, or the imitationists, because we want to jump to the top of the tree without passing through all the preliminary stages, and that is impossible to do that. So, within the niyamas prescribed for each step on the path of bhakti, there is one primary general niyama. Smartabhya satatam vishnor vishmatabhyo najatuchit sarve vidhi nishedha syur etayor eva kinkaraha. This is a verse from Padma Purana. Always remember Krishna and never forget Krishna. All prescriptions and prohibitions are servants of these two rules. Always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna. Now this actually requires a conscious decision and a conscious movement within ourselves. That to follow this, to always remember Krishna and never forget Krishna, means that consciously we have to try to mold our life in such a way that's favorable to this idea, not to forget Krishna and to always remember Krishna. So that means consciously putting ourselves in the association of the sadhus and the Vaishnavas, and consciously avoiding the association of those who are averse to Krishna bhakti. It requires some participation from our own side. Always remember Krishna Every prescription in the scriptures has arisen from this fundamental prescription. Never forget Krishna. Every prohibitive niyama has come from this fundamental prohibition. Remembering this fundamental prescription, a sadhaka, while progressing, should give up their adherence to prior prescriptions and accept subsequent prescriptions. If they do not, they are polluted by the fault of niyamagraha and will not be able to make advancement. Bhakti sadhakas should always remember this point. In Sri Hari Bhakti Vilas, there is a specific instruction in this regard. Krityani etani tu prayo, grihinam dhaninam satam, likitani natu tyakta parigraha mahatmanam. Nearly all the duties described in Sri Hari Bhakti Vilas are written for wealthy householder devotees. No niyamas have been written for the general souls who have, no niyamas have been written for the great souls who have renounced home. Avasyam tani sarvani tesham tad riktva siddhaye prag apekshani bhaktirhi sadacharaika sadhana. This is also from the Hari Bhakti Vilas. Although the niyamas for renounced persons have been expected of them in this text, sadhakas should still follow all such expected niyamas to maintain their renunciation. The conduct that is regularly observed by renounced sadhus is the proper conduct or sadachar in this regard, and this alone is to be followed by them. The first characteristic of a person who has developed shraddha, faith, is surrender, sharanagati, at the feet of Sri Krishna. According to the distinction between householders and renunciates, this is of two types. The niyamas for this level have been compiled in Sri Hari Bhakti Vilas as far as they are to be observed by householders. Because of this, rites such as Shiva Chaturdashi are described in the text. Those amongst them that are befitting renunciates should be observed by renunciates, who are surrendered souls. As they make advancement in their sadhana, both householders and renunciates become exclusively surrendered souls. Then the niyamas for them become somewhat different. At that level, with development in sadhana, complete surrender to Sri Krishna emerges. Jnana nishto virakto va madbhakto vanapekshaka salingam ashramams chakta chared avvidi gocharaha ekantitam gatanam tu Sri Krishna charana vyajho bhakti swata pravarteta tad vignai Kim brata dibhi namai ektana bhaktanam guna dosha bhava gunaha sadhunam samachittanam buddhe param upeyusham. This is from Srimad Bhagavatam and mentioned in Hari Bhakti Vilas. Regardless of whether my devotee is adherent to Gyan, renounced or disinterested, they will give up the ashrams and their respective paraphernalia and wander about beyond the scope of such rules. In the hearts of those who have become one-pointed upon the lotus feet of Krishna, bhakti is self-manifest, that it is not dependent on rites, niyamas and so on, and for them, rites, niyamas and so on are obstructive. The qualities of virtue and vice do not find any place in my exclusive devotees because they are equanimous sadhus who have crossed beyond material consciousness. Evam ekantinam praya kirtanam smaranam prabho kurvatam parama pritya krityam anyam narochyate vihitesha eva nityeshu pravartante sam svayam hite. Iti adi ekantinam bhati mahatmyam likidham hitat. This is again from Hari Bhakti Vilas. Exclusively surrendered devotees engage with deep love in nearly constantly glorifying and remembering Krishna, and thus they have no taste for all the duties designated for those of lower eligibility. At times, out of their own accord, they may observe the permanent prescriptions, but they are neither bound to such niyamas, nor are they excessively attached to or neglectful of them. They have no niyamagraha. This has been shown in the 8th verse of Sri Upadeshamrita, and this indeed is the greatness of the exclusive devotees. That is, they incur no loss whatsoever by not engaging in these other duties. The conclusion is that the niyamas pertaining to lower steps, which the great souls situated on higher steps follow, are simply their own voluntary pastimes. Jnanis, out of their own accord, follow the duties of varna and ashram, of the stage of karma. They do not follow them out of obligation to rules. Similarly, for various reasons, those eligible for bhakti, out of their own accord, follow niyamas of the karma and jnana stages. That is, although they are not bound to such prescriptions and prohibitions, they follow them out of their own accord. Similarly, even by following the niyamas of karma, jnana, and general sadhana bhakti, exclusive devotees of the highest eligibility in bhakti do not become niyamagrahis, those who are excessively attached to or neglectful of niyamas. They are engaged independently in exclusive bhajan or service to the lotus feet of Krishna. Only the niyamas which a devotee engaged in sadhana follows after having given up niyamagraha and become self-engaged are beneficial for them. The instruction is that by following the niyamas of their own stage, a sadhaka reaches a higher step as a result of those niyamas. Then, no attachment, agraha, to the previous niyamas should remain. Always remembering this instruction, a sadhaka should aspire to engage in bhajan, remembering and glorifying Sri Krishna, and continue gradually advancing. Okay. What do we think about that?
Niyamagraha, I didn't catch. What's it mean, Niyamagraha?
Niyamagraha means to be too attached to the rules or neglectful of the rules.
Like he's saying, out of butter, you make butter, the salt comes on top. So when the salt comes on top, is it impurity or?
If you want to make ghee, it's the solid, so they have to be taken off. So that example's been given, and how you make ghee, if you like, is butter oil, whereas butter is the same thing but solid. So that's mixed with some solid matter, whereas ghee is in its natural state is clear, like a clear golden liquid. So that example has been given to illustrate a similar thing in the process of anartha nibriti. So by constantly, you can say, boiling our anarthas by the constant remembrance and chanting of the holy name of the Lord, then necessarily the impurities rise to the surface. And we see that is something common to sadhana bhaktas, especially in the early stages of sadhana bhakti. That I remember many devotees refer that things that come in their consciousness. They say, I was never like that before I was a devotee. These things never came in my mind. But that means they were there within, but now they're coming to the surface. In homeopathic medicine, it's called the law of cure. So, according to the law of cure in homeopathy, the symptoms of the disease must come to the surface first. Whereas in allopathic medicine, the symptoms are usually suppressed, and so it deals with the symptom rather than the cause of that. Whereas in homeopathic medicine, if you're given the right prescription, then the symptom of the disease comes to the surface. So my mother, she suffers from psoriasis, which is a skin condition, a nervous skin condition, but can mean that you have like these big scab patches on your body in different places, on the arms, on the legs, on the face. It's quite ugly. It's like a different type of like eczema. My mother suffered from that since she was a girl of 15, and so she began homeopathic treatment of that. And after maybe 2 weeks, she rang me up and said, "Oh, I have to stop this because it's getting worse. It's actually getting worse. It's not getting better. It's getting worse." And then I explained to her, "Well, talk to your homeopath, but that's actually the law of cure. That those things, the symptoms of the disease, they have to come to the surface first. So it does appear like it's getting worse before it gets better. So before the disease can be expelled from the body, it has to come out. So similarly, in a similar way, when we are practicing sadhana bhakti and the process of anartha nibriti, the anarthas must come out. They can't be submerged or hidden. They have to come to the surface, and then we're forced to deal with those anarthas. So that's the whole process of anartha nibriti. That the unwanted thing comes to the surface, and sometimes that can be in the form of something gross. But it has to come to the surface. Then the sadhaka has to deal with that, and if they don't deal with that, again it goes down. Like again, when you're making ghee, if you don't skim off the solids, they just go back down into the ghee, and they'll remain there for some time, and then by the process of making that ghee, they'll arise again to the top to be skimmed off. So similarly, our anarthas will always rise to the surface until we deal with them. And as we progress in sadhana bhakti, the anarthas become less gross, more subtle. And the more subtle our anarthas, the more difficult they are to, first of all, to identify, and secondly, to do away with. Because within bhakti sadhana, then we know the yamas and the niyamas, the prescriptions and the prohibitions, they change as we progress. This is what this discussion is telling us. As we progress, they become more subtle as we progress in our Krishna consciousness. So from gross to subtle, and those things need to be dealt with. Otherwise, until they're dealt with, they just keep coming up again and again and again. So it means we have to be, first of all, we have to be fully honest with ourselves. Yes. We have to be completely honest with our own self. So, we're habituated to projecting a particular kind of image of ourselves, which may not be actually true. Yes. That and often we believe that ourselves. That carefully constructed image of who we are, we try to convince others that we are that, and after a while we also convince ourselves that we're that. But that's another type of anartha. So I think it was the Roman Marcus Aurelius who said, the greatest fault is to think that we have none. So
No one is perfect.
first of all, we have to identify our own fault and skim it off. That's the anarta, and that goes from gross to subtle. And subtle means desire for prestige and pratishta and so many other things that come in its wake. But we have to deal with that too, and that can only be dealt with by being totally honest. That's why Srila Gurudev would often say, my religion is finding fault with myself. So we have to try to identify our own faults and not just shrug them off saying, well, you know, just the way I am, I can't change that. No, we have to actually deal with it. We have to deal with that, because those things aren't actually who we are. We're not actually those things. They're only part of our material conditioning. And Srila Guru Maharaj says that they're like mental mushrooms. Like mushrooms have no roots. Where they grow mushrooms on top of the soil, they're not rooted to the soil. So if you throw a bucket of water there, you can wash away the mushrooms. But we think that those things are indelibly connected with who we are. But actually that's only another form of Maya. So we are to understand that we are Nitya Krishna Das, that we are the pure eternal servant of Krishna, and that everything else is only a covering. And the way to remove that covering is through the constant repetition of the holy name of the Lord with faith and with sincerity. Cheto Darpana Marjanam. This verse, Mahaprabhu has given this, the first verse of Shikastakam, that the first wave of the effect of chanting the holy name of the Lord is that it cleanses the mirror of our consciousness, so that we're able to perceive our own self in a proper way. So that's our faith. Otherwise, why we are every day chanting so many Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna? Why? If we don't have any faith that it will effect the change that is required within us for us to become eligible for Krishna Bhakti. We have to have faith in that we may not be able to change ourselves, but the holy name will be able to change us. But we shouldn't think that just listening to our own sound will give us the result. The chanting of the holy name must be properly informed by the conception that has been given to us by our Gurudev and our Guru Parampara. So that with that chanting comes along Sambandha Gyan. Sambandha Gyan is that knowledge which is necessary for us to understand who is Krishna, what is Krishna Nam, who are we, what is the world, what is Maya, what is our relationship, how we are interrelated with all of those things. That is Sambandha Gyan. And with proper Sambandha Gyan, our chanting becomes informed by that. So, and that plea, that earnest plea for the grace of the Lord may fortuitously one day mean that the Lord himself will descend into the chanting of our chanting of the holy name. As Srila Gurudev said, that means that your tongue will become his dancing place, and your heart will become his dwelling place. And as Guru Maharaj has told us, when that happens, nothing else can remain. When Krishna enters the heart, nothing else can remain in there. No darkness, no anarta, no anything can remain in the heart when Krishna is allowed to land in the heart. Veni Vici Vidi, Guru Maharaj saying, I came, I saw, I conquered, was the words of Julius Caesar. So similarly, that is Krishna. He will come and he will occupy your heart, and when he does that, he'll take possession of everything. And Guru Maharaj said, and this is our solace, that we do not need to even invite him. That because Krishna is a thief, and for his own purpose, stealthily, he will enter like a thief in the middle of the night, find his own way in, and take possession. So that is our solace, that Krishna is a thief, and he has come to steal away our heart. Guru Maharaj said Krishna likes hearts, not so much brains. So he is the consumer of hearts, Krishna, the consumer of hearts. He takes the heart, consumes the heart, and makes the heart the place for his own residence. That is our solace. Only we shall try and invoke his grace upon us as earnestly as we are able to, and with some kind of prayer of contrition. Yes, that my Lord, I have done so much wrong in my life, and finally I have no alternative but to place myself before your grace. And if you'll be merciful to me, then you can take my charge. You can make me as you want me to be. And this should be the genuine prayer of the disciple, the aspiring devotee. Please, Lord, here I am, warts and all, however rotten that may be, here I am. But I am also part of you and your created part and parcel. Therefore, take my charge, O Lord, and make me as you would want me to be. If we can sincerely believe that and hope for that, Krishna will not deny us. So, you remember in the 1970s, perhaps, when there was that Irish comedian, Dave Allen. He's always making religious jokes. He used to make a lot of religious jokes. And he used to finish his show by saying, "May your God go with you," or something. But one time he said, "Oh Lord, please make me a saint, but not today." So we want that. We want Krishna consciousness, but the reality is we want something other than that as well. We want, yes, Krishna consciousness, but in a while, when I've got through all the other stuff that I want. So really we have to come to a point of being exhausted with the endeavor for the material world. And then, when we're really finished with that, we can say, Lord, please, maybe I'm addicted to so many things in this material world, but please take my charge and make me who you want me to be. That's my prayer. That's the prayer of the surrendered soul. Otherwise, it is not possible. By our own strength, by our own sadhana, by our own endeavor, we cannot rise ourselves very high. But he is there, and we're not dealing with an impersonal, amorphous divinity. We're dealing with reality, the beautiful, in Guru Maharaj's words. So he is there waiting for us to turn to him, and he will never ignore the prayer of the sincere soul. So the only thing is to become sincere. Somebody asked Srila Guru Maharaj that question, how do I become sincere? And Guru Maharaj's reply was, there's no magic process. And Guru Maharaj's reply, very simple, straightforward reply, just by being sincere. Either you are or you aren't. But he did clarify that also by saying, sincerity is one of the attributes of the soul. So that sincerity is within you. You just have to be able to mine that, somehow connect with that. And that part of you that came to embrace Krishna consciousness, maybe in a naive and childish way, in the early time when we recognize Krishna consciousness as the path of truth, you can trust that inner aspect of yourself not to mislead you. Where that came from, that is the sincerity within you, and that again we can tap that. Again we can avail ourselves of that, because it is part of who we are. The soul has inert or sincerity within it. So only we have to try and do that. So if we are earnest, simply by the chanting of the holy name of the Lord, we can unearth that aspect of ourselves. I was very surprised to read Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. We all know, right, that Namabhas can afford liberation from the material world, but may not give us service. Namabhas means a reflection of the name. But I even read, Saraswati Thakur said, there's so much power in the holy name that even Namaparad can give us benefit in this material world. Even Namaparad. So we should not give up our chanting, thinking that our chanting is only Namaparad. Even if it is Namaparad, that can also effect something good because it has connection with Krishna. And Krishna is the all-good. So no connection with Krishna in any way, shape or form can ever be bad.
Like Haridas Thakur did.
Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur. Okay, so today we can finish our discussion, and thank everybody that was able to join with us online, and also those who may listen to this later on when it's recorded on our East London Mott Facebook page. We're trying to do this every week as much as we can, and we're also connecting every Wednesday evening with Srila Bhakti Pavan Janardhan Maharaj at 7 p.m. on Zoom, and every Saturday at midday, Greenwich Mean Time, with Srila Bhakti Ranjan Madhusudan Maharaj. And also there are many other daily and weekly classes going on. Srila Acharya Maharaj also giving a class every week, I think on Sundays, about this time in fact. And Goswami Maharaj, every few days at least, they're broadcasting something of his talks. Every day, Srila Janardhan Maharaj giving Chaitanya Charitamrita class online, and also Ashram Maharaj, Bhakti Kusham Ashram Maharaj, and Janardhan Maharaj, they also both give classes in Spanish. My wife's a Spanish speaker, so she tunes into those classes almost every day. There are many classes out there by qualified Vaishnavas. You can connect with them, and you can remain Krishna conscious. You can make some effort to engage in Krishna consciousness, to hear Hari Katha, and to serve the Vaishnavas in any way possible. Thank you all again. Hope you all safe, all well, and we are praying for the day when we can all be together for Nama Sankirtan, Hari Katha, and Mahaprasadam in the usual way, the conventional way. And remember, all things pass, and this will also pass. So that day will come, and that day will be the cause of a great Maha Mahotsav, when again we can all come together. Jai Srila Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj ki jai. Jai Srila Bhakti Rakshakshida Dev Goswami Maharaj ki jai. Bhagavan Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur ki jai. Rupa Nuga Guru Bhargya ki jai. Jai Sri Chaitanya Saraswati Acharya Vrinda ki jai. Nama Sankirtan ki jai. Kol Kartel ki jai. Nitai Gaura Premanandi. Hari Hari.